And tonight, this one will set you on fire. So you ready? You are paying thousands of people millions of dollars to do nothing.
The number of people that are AWOL a day in the federal government. In other words, they're not taking a paid day off, they're not sick, they just don't show up for work. And that's a large number that's into the billions of dollars it costs every year. And we don't have the management tools to fire somebody who just doesn't show up for work.
Imagine leadership that knows how to prioritize to ensure national security and to stop government waste.
Government's going to have to learn to do more with less. You know what? It's not government's money, it's the people's money and our children's money, because we're borrowing from the next generation to pay for all of it.
You and I know that the federal government wastes hundreds of billions of dollars each year.
Look, there are dozens of job training programs which overlap and duplicate each other.
Cutting waste means more fairness and accountability for hardworking taxpayers.
We have great federal employees. The vast majority of them do superb work. But you can't manage an organization if you can't control who works and who doesn't.
Well, you heard right. While the Defense Department and FAA get ready to furlough critical workers, the federal government is spending millions paying workers who are AWOL. That means you, the taxpayers, are paying them to do nothing. How do you feel about that? Washington Examiner Chief Political Correspondent Byron York joins us. Nice to see you, Byron.
Good to be here.
Okay, so there are two categories. This started with Senator Tom Coburn, and there are two categories, sort of the ones we pay are standby and AWOL. Those are put on.
Well, the first is AWOL, in that obviously if a worker is not at work, he should have permission to not be at work on leave. And what Coburn discovered when he did a study of this was that a lot of federal workers will just not show up for part of a day, whatever. And the number has grown. He found that between 2001 and 2007, the number of hours that federal workers were AWOL almost doubled. And I mean, now it's 9,400 work years a year. So it's like 9,400 employees who just don't show up. So he's arguing that if we're going to be furloughing people for sequestration, furloughing people in critical jobs, meat inspectors or air traffic controllers, why don't we look at this?
The other sort of disturbing thing, which is another side, is that you can't fire people who don't show up for the government.
Yeah, if you look at the firing rates for the government versus the private sector, I mean, there's no comparison at all. It is incredibly difficult to get fired from the federal government. Just essentially doesn't happen.
You know, it's just, I mean, it's absolutely stunning. Then there's the other category that Senator Tom Coburn has isolated, and that is the people who we pay who are receiving standby pay. Yeah. I have two questions. What is that? Secondly, is how do I get that job?
Well, these are people who the management feels might be needed on a particular day, but are not definitely needed, so they're asked to stay close and to be ready to come in, and they're paid for it. So, I mean, and Coburn found that there were, I think, $13 million just last year spent on keeping workers on standby. There are actually...
And if they come in, we pay them too for their time,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a couple of other categories that are really interesting that he found. One is called workers who are not working on official time, and that is, for example, a worker who spends a lot of his time doing union duties, where perhaps he's the shop steward or something. They're actually paid by the federal government, and they do almost no work for the federal government. And this was an enormous amount, $155 million in 2011, which is the equivalent full year's work for 1,632 people, all doing non-official work. And the last is people who are idle because they're waiting for security clearances. So, you know, the government employs hundreds of thousands of contractors. A lot of times those contractors, after they're hired, cannot do the job they were hired for until they get a security clearance. The process can take months and months and months. And the Coburn estimated you spend maybe $1 billion a month paying workers to do nothing until they get the clearance to do the job they were hired to do.
Well, even that would make sense if you're going to hire someone and you can't get a security clearance done in 6 months, as you tell the person, don't leave your other job and not put them on the federal payroll and start paying them until the security clearance has been completed.
Yeah, this is just...
I mean, it's just, some of the stuff is just stupid.
It's like the maximum wasteful way to do it, the way we're doing it now. And again, the interesting thing about sequestration is it has allowed budget hawks like Coburn to go to the file cabinet and look at all the things that they've been talking about for years about wasteful federal spending and say, before you furlough critical workers, do this. or do this. I mean, he's got a lot of examples here.
But it's not even a question of being a budget hawk. I mean, it's just sort of common sense and even, frankly, decency. I mean, why are we paying people just to sort of stand by? Why are we paying people who are AWOL? I mean, a lot of these things are just, I mean, it's disturbing that the American people who are trying to hang on to their jobs in the private sector out there hear what goes on here in Washington. Now, I mean, there are a lot of federal workers who work really hard, work overtime, don't get paid, so I don't mean to take away from them, but there's so much waste.
No, a lot of what Coburn has learned has been from federal workers who were disturbed by what they saw going on in the federal government. So you're right. This is a large number of federal workers. This is just not a problem at all. But they don't like what's going on inside the government.
Well, according to a congressional research memo dated March 28th, it just sort of breaks down what departments. For instance, the Department of Health and Human Services has 148 employees who receive standby pay.
Well, this is a case where Coburn in this letter has asked for a justification of all this kind of stuff. And here again, there are several different categories. Could be at least $1 billion a month where the federal government is just throwing money away.
And we can't figure out how to keep the White House tours open for the kids in town anyway. Byron, thank you.
Thank you.